welcome back to another episode of the Good Advice Podcast. You're tuning into the best resource for entrepreneurs, startup founders. Maybe you're a wantrepreneur. You're working that 9-to-5 job and you're thinking about, hey, what could actually happen if I quit this thing and actually started something of my own? Whatever the case may be, whatever you may be doing, I hope to give you some good advice today. The whole mantra of this show is that we boil the show down to really the nuts and bolts of entrepreneurship. Get away from all that theory stuff and really talk about what should you actually be doing to grow your business. Today's episode, we have an awesome guest joining the podcast. It's actually a round 2 conversation with someone who was on the podcast last year. We got Garrett Peters joining the show today. Garrett is the CEO of Duncan Stone. They're a paper company that is really blowing the world away with their products on Amazon, as well as on their website, duncanandstone.com. Garrett's got a really wild story about actually quitting his job and coming to help really grow and scale Duncan Stone. And I'm excited to sit down with him in this conversation today and talk about the journey of entrepreneurship and really how do you truly wow your customers. All that and more is on today's episode. But before we dive in, here's a quick word from one of the amazing businesses that sponsor the podcast. Of course, if you're subscribed to the Patreon, you're actually going to jump right past that, straight into the conversation. All that to say, we'll talk soon. Check this out. We talk to all sorts of business owners on the podcast, and one of the most common trends is business owners who just, for whatever reason, didn't fit in the corporate environment. A lot of entrepreneurs are seeking something, they're seeking an answer, and they're trying to figure out the simple question of, how do I fit in the world? And more importantly, is there a way to make a living that doesn't involve the traditional 9-to-5 job? One of the biggest pieces of advice that I give to entrepreneurs is, hey, you got to learn about who you are, what drives you, your motivation. That's why I want to tell you about this book, Your Turning Point, 33 Questions for Transformation. I love the impact I've been able to make through Good Advice and the Good Advice podcast, but that would not have been doable without taking an honest assessment of who I was today and who I wanted to be tomorrow. Go to the website, the33questions.com, and get yourself a copy of Your Turning Point by Stephen J. Blank. And let's continue on this road for transformation together. Again, the website is the33questions.com, where you can buy your book today. All right, how you doing today, man?
Hey, Blake. I'm doing good, man. Doing good.
How's your day going?
Honestly, it's good so far.
Good. You got your Duncan Stone swag.
Got to.
Yeah.
Don't leave home without it, honestly.
Is that the takeaway?
That's basically my go-to everyday wear right now.
Do you sell the hat, by the way?
I don't sell the hats.
Oh,
no.
so it's
this is one of a kind. This is a one of a kind.
Oh,
it really is. So
you bought one.
I bought one.
Yeah. It was $40.
It was. It was like $70.
They asked, like, do you want the bulk price?
It was too much. No.
Well, you've been on the show again.
Yeah.
You and your co-founders have been on the show. This is round 2. This is where we bring back some of our favorite guests to have a follow-up conversation. It's good to have you on today, man. I really loved that first conversation we had.
Thank you, man. It was a blast. That was probably last year. It was like fall of last year or something like that.
Yeah,
I believe.
What was really cool about y'all's episode is because I record the episode, I post it, and then I cut a soundbite. What was great about y'all's episode was there were so many, like, there's always like a ditch to ditch where it's like I have nothing to cut.
Yeah.
Like where I'm scanning through it and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to really stretch to get a soundbite here. And then there's other ones like y'all's where it's like, dude, which one do I choose?
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And to be clear, none of them were mine. So it was 100% Sarah and Stephanie. Okay. I almost guarantee it.
Yeah.
So
well, now you're doing
anyway. I just wanted to come back so I could talk more. Honestly, like they spoke too much whenever we were on.
You guys are at this level now, and you want to bring it back.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, we don't have time for podcasts, Garrett. You go do that.
Now you're doing some podcasting,
yeah,
right?
I'm trying to get into it a little bit.
You're getting on different shows, talking about the story. Because here's what's really cool about you guys. And there's a couple things I want to make sure I talk about today, by the way. I'm so like ADD that if I don't say this here, I'll forget about it. I want to talk about something you posted yesterday.
Yep.
Getting invited to the wedding.
We got to talk about that.
I want to talk about that. I think it's just, there's a brilliant insight there.
Yep.
But separate from that, you guys are past the point, I'm sure, where, like friends and family where they're like, are you still doing that thing?
Yep.
And then you kind of get to the point where you're like, oh, this is a real business.
It
this.
Yeah.
So
we've grown up a little bit over the years for sure.
Well, tell me a little bit about Duncan Stone, what you guys are doing. For people maybe who didn't hear the first episode, what do you do?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. So Duncan Stone is a business my wife and I and two founders, Sarah and Garland, two other founders, started in 2019, 2020. And we set out to sell prompted keepsake journals. And we started the business in 2019 and started selling products in 2020. It was kind of our launch in the spring of 2020, literally February of 2020. It was a very wild time to start an e-commerce business, actually. So,
and let's pause it for a second.
Yeah.
So because I even remember you were still working at Harvest Group. I remember your wife and Sarah, there was a post that was like our business plan, and it was like a cardboard box.
It was. Yeah.
This is like, by the way, this is so like how we do these things.
It was
wild.
It was wild.
Yeah.
So at the time, I was actually I was not at Harvest at the time when we started. I had left. I had left a couple years before, like 2017, 2018.
Oh wow, I'm way off on the timing then.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
But I was at a new role at the time when we started in 2019.
Yeah. Okay.
So we honestly, like, so when we sat down with Sarah and Garland and we're like, hey, we think there's a business idea here. There's an opportunity. Stephanie and I spent many of nights doing things like you're just described, the business plan thing. Like, we're literally sketching out stuff on cardboard boxes after kids are in bed.
Yeah.
And so that was a lot of our life for 2019, 2020 was that. Because I had a full-time job.
Yeah.
I mean, when we started Duncan and Stone, it was a true side hustle.
Yeah.
And so we figured out, like, we literally were working on every little piece of the business from day one. How to start a website, how to get set up as a brand on Amazon,
right? How
to get set up on Etsy, like how to source products, just the list of things we were just going through every night and just working on it.
Like, at what point did this become like, oh, we're starting a business versus like, hey, yeah, this is an idea. Let's just see if it like makes us any cash. I mean, What's interesting about that question is something that came up a little bit with your conversation with Steve Blair. I listened to that podcast yesterday, and our vision of Duncan and Stone was not like Harvest Group. So it was not, we want to build an organization, we want to build a company. Yeah.
It wasn't anything like that. We just didn't have the desire to do that.
Yeah.
And so for us, we were looking at this as, could we make a passive income stream business on the side? Now, we'll get to like what happened in the next few years, but for us, it was like, let's just see what happens. I was interested in like starting something. We're all like, this could be fun to do together, and they're some of our best friends. And so it was, let's see if we could sell products and create something. And it wasn't necessarily like we want to build a big business or build an organization. It was just like, I'm intrigued with the idea of starting an online business. So let's see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, was that just like an entrepreneurial?
It was a little bit of I found myself through my career around people that were entrepreneurs.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So I just kept, whether it was at Harvest Group, then I left to go to Arena, another local business.
Right.
All led by people who are entrepreneurial minded people.
Yeah.
And so I just found myself in these roles of like, maybe there's something in me that kind of is interested.
Like, that's interesting.
In that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm curious about
this. So I had a little bit of the bug to like, maybe we could start something. Let's see what happens. Now, we did not know what was going to happen, like transpire. We really didn't. When we launched in 2020, it was like, we're selling products. Like, orders are coming in. We were packing and shipping orders, for a long time.
How'd you get your first customer?
Through ads. I mean, from day one, we were doing ads.
Yeah.
The first customer was my mother-in-law. So let's be clear. Like, that was the first order on our website was my mother-in-law, which we still have that, order frame basically of like, this is our first order. So it was friends and family for a season.
Sure.
But, I mean, we're doing ads, we're getting our name out there as much as we could, as a startup business. So
yeah, I think my first podcast download was me, and I think my second one was my wife.
Absolutely. No doubt about that.
Definitely for like 30 days, it was like 2 downloads per episode. Yeah. And Joy's like, great job.
Let's go.
I was like, it's just the two of us.
I know. Well, dude, when we're seeing like a couple orders a day coming in, we thought we were the best thing ever.
Yeah.
I'm like, where we're gonna be so rich. This is amazing. And I'm like, we thought we were amazing.
Yeah.
But anyway, we didn't know what we were doing.
Okay, so you got into it, started growing this thing. You became a full-time co-founder of Duncan Stone. Yep. The business, I mean, you have what, 30 products now?
We have 34 items now that we sell.
I mean,
so
we
started with 5. We started with 5 in 2020, and we're all just kind of doing different pieces of the business. Sarah and Stephanie are moms. They have kiddos. Garland has a full-time job somewhere else, so he's not able to work on the business. Everyone's just kind of chipping in, and we started with 5 items that we started selling in 2020, and basically just month after month, we're just pushing the ball forward. We're just kind of doing what we can to keep going, to the point of holidays of 2020 was our first holiday season, and we thought it was amazing. I won't share the numbers. They weren't anything impressive for sure, but it was enough of volume where it was like, oh my goodness, what's happening? Like, this is starting to go without us. Like,
it has a natural momentum.
It just started natural momentum.
And then you start thinking about, okay, if I spent more time on this, where could it go?
Well, it wasn't necessarily that. It was more so I couldn't manage my full-time job and responsibilities at my office. Rightly so. They're expecting me to be there and dialed in, and also Duncan Stone.
Yeah.
So I had to make the decision. That's what happened in 2021.
Yeah.
Was I walked into our kitchen, and we talked about this probably last time, but I walked in, I said, Stephanie, I can't do this. This is too much. Because I got customers reaching out now about their orders and all this stuff. And I also have my office asking me for things. Right. And so she looked at me and she was like, you need to quit your job. I was like, that's a bad idea. That is not a good idea. We weren't even making any money on the business. Mm-hmm. And so, long story short, I did. So I quit my job in 2021.
Wear you down to this idea? Or like,
she was working.
It's not what I mean, but
yeah,
like, you should keep mentioning it, or
not really. Stephanie has always had the role of, she kind of saw ahead. She was working on the business pretty heavily at the time, and more than me. And so she's like, I'm looking at our numbers for 2021, and she's forecasting the business. And she's like, okay, I think that if we can do this, we'll be fine. Like, this could, supplement and replace your income. That was the goal. And so we looked at the numbers, talked to our partners, and I talked to a couple good friends. And the next day, I quit my job.
The next day?
Next day.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was like, if we're doing this, let's go.
Yeah.
Like, I'm no sense in waiting.
Yeah. Now, this is right after COVID, I guess a year after COVID. Mm-hmm. Did you have other friends and family who were like, bro, what are you doing?
Oh, most of them.
Yeah. Okay.
Most of them probably thought that. Now, whether or not they said that to me, is a different story.
Yeah.
But I think that, my good friends were like, hey, even if this doesn't make it in a year, if a year from now you're like, hey, it just hasn't grown like you think it should, or you need it to, you can go get another job.
Totally.
I'll call Steve Blair, and see if I can go back to Harvest Group or something, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, it was like, it's a risk for sure, but it was like, we'll see what happens.
Why do you think people have such an interesting, because I remember also around COVID, I had people I knew who I didn't even ask, who were like, hey, dude, you should really probably close down Good Advice. Like,
really?
no conversations about Good Advice, just like third party, like, hey, the economy's in shambles, things are going to be awful. No one's going to pay for anything that you do. Like, which I was like, okay.
What?
So
unsolicited
we
advice.
Just got coffee, but but point being though, as I've learned, there's people out there who are not entrepreneurial at all. It's hard for them to to have like the blank slate, like the canvas, and see where it goes.
Yeah.
Now, you obviously saw an opportunity. You saw something that you wanted to create. And now you're also in this world of entrepreneurship where you have other entrepreneurs. How does this compare to like back in your 9 to 5? Like, obviously your days are different. I'm assuming like the conversations you're having with people are a little bit different.
Yeah,
but
totally.
Like, what does that look like for you?
I mean, it's been a journey. I think that the last few years really appreciated other starters and founders that have gone before me, because what I found out in 2021 was, oh man, this is not for the faint of heart.
Oh yeah.
Like starting a business, running your own business, especially solo, like this, that was your world.
Yeah.
And
sure,
man, it was tough. And so I thought many times that this was a bad idea. And, but for us, I was putting my head down. I'm like, let's just keep pushing the ball forward. Let's keep doing the things that we need to be doing and see what happens. But what I've learned now as I talk to friends or, people I know, in this area that are like interested in starting a business or doing something different, I find myself being more like empowering, encouraging them to go, hey, listen, I'm all about starting somewhere.
Yeah.
Like if you have an idea, like see what happens. Like why not? Like vet it. Like make it, like if it's a legitimate thing you want to do, try it out. That's what I did. It's like I didn't immediately leave my job before we had anything. I was like, I want to work on this thing and see if that's a reality.
You
do
validated.
A little bit. Yeah,
there was money there.
Now, could I have left my job immediately and been successful like as we started for a few years? I don't know. Probably, but I think there's a special network of people that are started their own businesses or doing their own thing that let's just kind of encourage each other and connect to other people, or hey, let me see what I can do to help you. Like, why not? Like there's more. It's not like it doesn't feel competitive. It's almost like let's all go for it together. Yeah.
It's interesting. I feel like I could be more empowering for people because I typically the conversations.
I think you are.
Well, I think what conversations I get into, I try not to like push the brakes on people, but I feel like I do sometimes where someone's like, hey, dude, I got this idea. It's going to be better than Amazon. I'm quitting my job tomorrow.
For sure.
And I'm like, whoa, hang on.
Time out.
Yeah, let's not, you have 5 kids. Let's not quit your job.
Let's be realistic about it.
Right. But social media, though, isn't real.
It's not realistic.
And so what people often see on social media, and I've said this 1,000 times on the podcast, what people often see on social media is, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful. My cup runneth over. I quit my job a month ago and I'm already making $1 million. This is awesome. Which it's like total BS. It's not true. But so I talk to people and they're like, oh, this idea is great. I'm quitting my job. I'm doing this. And I'm like, man, I don't know if you fully appreciate how grueling it is to run a business. And I don't mean that I've said something like this to a friend of mine where I was like, man, the entrepreneurial grind. He was like, well, I don't think of it as a grind. And I was like, all right, bro, sure. Whatever you want to call it. It's fine.
For sure.
But it is like for you guys listening, if you've read 4 Hour Work Week, if you think you're going to quit your job tomorrow and then live the 4 Hour Work Week, you are in for a very rude awakening.
It's true.
It really is a lot. But point being, when you talk about being empowering, I want to be empowering, but I know for me, I spent a lot of money very fast and it put me in a very challenging situation.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. Like it's right, having the right expectation early on. But, and I've met with a handful of friends locally who are starting their own business and things like that. And I love helping people, but I want to be real and frank with them to say, hey, listen, you need to stop watching shows at night. You need to stop do whatever it looks like. If you're serious about it, you cut that stuff out and you work on it. You gotta do it. Yeah. And in a right way. Cause like I got down a path of like my life was consumed with Duncan and Stone during 2021. But cause I got caught up in that grind hustle mentality a little too much. But the reality is you gotta put in effort and work. It's not going to happen outside of that.
And I think it's a great insight too, because I think, and I've talked about this on the show, there is like the hustler mentality, the hustle grind that I think is very toxic. But on the same token, to give credit to that, I've had lots of 14, 15, 16-hour days just because there's so much to do.
Absolutely.
Like there's so many parts of you see the opportunity on the wall and you're like, I got to go for that.
Yes. Because the reality is it's nonstop.
Right.
You could work every hour of every day. It's like there's so much stuff to do.
Right.
So finding that balance, there's seasons of that for us for a couple years. Stephanie and I, we had young kids at the time. My youngest was like 3 and 2 and 3. And so we have 3 boys at the house. And I'm like, we just didn't have time to do anything else.
Right.
Cause like at night, our printing partner's overseas. we're working at nights. And so it was seasonal. Like I'm not saying it was every night, but like there was just a lot of effort and time you got to put in. And so now, because our business is a few years in and we're stable, it doesn't look the same. Now, you got to there's something about that mentality of like, you can't be complacent. You know, once your business is kind of established and going, it's like, you can't just not do anything. It's, like you kind of got to keep that mentality. And so that's what we're working through now is like, how do we plan for growth in 2024 and 25? Like, what is going to keep us going? And let's do that. Yeah. Without killing ourselves along the way.
Right. Well, because, I mean, it's like, what are you doing it for if you're like working more hours or more stress than you ever were at your 9 to 5?
It's like, that's a bad move.
Yeah.
Might as well go back to whatever else you were doing.
So I want to transition the conversation. Something else I want to talk about today is, you guys, it's interesting because talking about like people starting a business, I think sometimes people get like really emotionally invested into their idea, and it's like, man, this is going to revolutionize the world. It's going to change the world, and it's like, yeah, you're selling umbrellas, like it's like,
right.
It's I don't fault you, but it's also like, okay, cool, that's kind of a solved game.
Yeah.
So what's cool though is when they start something and the brand starts to build so much like emotional impacts, like where people who buy your product start to really connect with you. And then you have people who are sending emails, they're reaching out, this changed my life, and you're like, it's a journal, dude. Like, and I don't mean like to discount anything like that, but there's this cool inflection point where now it's less about the product and people are really seeing like an awesome benefit to what you're doing. And I'm bringing this up because I know you got an email just yesterday. Somebody, well, I guess you tell the story.
And so we get an email to our support email address that says basically that this woman and her husband or fiance love our product so much that they want me to come to their wedding in October. I think it's October 5th, I believe.
Yeah.
So, which I'm going. I've already booked my flight for sure.
Yeah. Where's the wedding at?
I can't tell you that information. Okay. Yeah. So just keeping that customer, protected. No, it was very funny. It was like, I kind of made a fun thing out of it.
Yeah.
But I was shocked.
Yeah.
That was even a thing. And, anyway, it was kind of fun to put it out there and get some feedback on it. But apparently it's like an actual thing. There's the connection that customers can have to a brand.
Yeah. I mean, is someone you've never talked to?
Never talked to. And I need to find out more. I haven't, been communicating with them as much as I should in the last 24 hours. But anyway, I want to find out what their story is. Because we have a lot of repeat customers. So we have people that are buying stuff for every baby shower they go to, every, bridal shower, whatever it may be. And so, that was part of the reason we wanted to create the products we did was, hey, we want people to constantly be giving this as a gift because they love it. It's like a meaningful thing. So for us, and Sarah on our team has done an amazing job with this because she's the creator and designer of all of our products. And she's like, we're in the business of showing people that this is an item that they need to get for their dad or for their sister. Like, be the one that wins at the bridal shower because you give the best item, like they're meaningful gifts. And so, it's interesting to see like the customer like feedback we get over the years, and they love it, man.
I mean, and I talk a lot about this on the like social media, but also the podcast is like this whole concept of raving fans, like people who, they love your brand. Like they love it more than maybe you love it yourself. I know. You're just like, wow.
I feel that way sometimes.
I mean, it's very humbling. It's very much appreciated. But I mean, looking at the details of the situation, you have someone who bought your product and loved it so much, they wanted you to come to the most important day of their life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
all fantastic.
That's what it is at the end of the day.
What's really cool is, a lot of the products we've created over the years are at least like having customer input into some of those creations. We like to put feedback out there. What would you like to see? What do we not offer that we could? And we obviously are vetting that with our own like decisions on whether we should create something. But let me give you an example. So an item we launched last year is a grief journal. And so came out of this feedback and just team input from our team around people are going through loss and going through grief. Like, what could we create that would help people through that process? And so it's such a vulnerable place. And so we created this journal last year, and we've gotten so much feedback of like, hey, my mother passed away, or whatever it may be, or my mother-in-law passed away, and now I've got one of these for my father-in-law or for my husband or whatever to go through that season. Like, that's such a powerful season.
Yeah.
And it's a journal. Like but it's that connection that somebody's like, I'm gifting this. This is such a meaningful thing. Hey, I know this is hard. I hope this helps through this tough season.
And it's interesting too. It's a great insight of like using customer feedback to iterate and grow your product. Cause I know a lot of business owners I knew a guy I talked to, who he was bleeding customers, and I can't remember what he sold or what we were even talking about, but we were talking about like some sort of point of feedback that he had gotten from one of his customers. And he was like, well, if they don't like it, they can go somewhere else. And I was like, but that is what they're doing. That's the whole point of our conversation.
That's not good. Yeah.
They're leaving. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
But I've known business owners who are so resistant to, well, that's just not the product I sought to create. It's not what I'm looking to do.
Yeah.
Instead of making the customers like part of the process. And it seems like you guys 100%. Are doing that really well.
Yeah, we're trying to. Now, there's certain things that some of the products that we've made and sell that customers give us feedback. Hey, what if you could do this differently? Or what if this looked different? And we value that. That's fine. But it's one of those things where we say, we're not going to actually adjust that because we're not going to make that adjustment. So there's how do you like holding on to the brand values and of like, hey, this is who we are. This is what we're about. This is the type of products that we're going to create, and we're going to stick to that. But give us ideas. Like customer threw out a pet, or maybe it was somebody on our team. Like, we should make a journal for pet owners.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I'm thinking of my dog. I got professional photos of my dog.
I was like, what? Is that a thing? Maybe, but does it fit within the architecture of like, this is what we're about? You know what I'm saying? So I think there's a balance there for sure. But to the story you just said, if customers leave, we no longer have a business.
Right.
That's done. Yeah. Like, if they stop buying from us, we're not doing anything. So it's like, that's the tension of like, you need to deliver and be open to the feedback.
How do you balance, I don't even want to say like good and bad feedback. I think sometimes there is just like blatant, and I'm not even so much talking about customers. I'm talking about just like, you're running your own business and like someone, oh, you should really do this. And they know nothing about your business. 100%. They're just like, they're very confident. Yeah. So I think there's good advice, there's bad advice, and then there's good advice that doesn't apply to me. Like someone who's like, hey, you should write a book. And it's like, I'm not going to write a book. Like, do books help people? Sure. But I'm not going to write a book.
Yeah.
So like, what does it look like for you to like filter that kind of stuff? Especially like when you didn't ask for the advice and someone's like, you really got to do this. Like,
I know.
How do you navigate all that?
That's a good question, man. That's a good question. I feel like you talked to somebody about this recently on your podcast. I think maybe Elizabeth, like early on.
Yes,
like I think
Elizabeth
you were talking. Yeah, very interesting feedback that she gave. And I get it. Like for me, I'll speak to myself just as the head wrangler of Duncan Stone. I'm kind of the gatekeeper of sorts for our team. So as ideas, marketing opportunities, hey, whatever it may be, like things that come across for Duncan Stone, I kind of vet that myself. And it's through like the lenses of, we set out as a team over the last year and a half to say, this is where we're going. Like, this is our plan. Mm-hmm. If something comes along that is not part of that plan, like, it's just a not hard no. It's like, we're not going to do that right now. Mm-hmm. Now, if we've invested a lot into marketing and brand awareness and building our audience. So if it's something along that, it's like, maybe like we're open to test stuff. That's kind of where we've been is, if it's not super complicated, if it's something that's going to get our brand out there, then we're open to it. But I think for us, it came with deciding on like what we're going to be about. Like, here's our core. We have KPIs that we're looking at every month. And as a team, we're reviewing every quarter. And just getting clear on where we're heading. And then if things come along, like there's a lot of things we pass on. Customers or partnership opportunities that we're like, no, we're just not going to do it. Like, it's just not going to fit with us right now. And so we just don't waste time.
It doesn't fit like your like goals for your taking the business, goals, like values.
Either one of those. Right now, it's mainly about just the KPIs and marketing goals that we have. So whether it be partnerships or honestly, like even retail opportunities for us. Like we're almost all a online e-commerce business right now. We have a few customers that we sell in their stores, but that is a thing that we've decided to focus on, growing our online business. So as retail opportunities come along, we're just pushing that off right now. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is not part of the goal right now. Maybe next year, maybe, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's hard to do though. Cause for me, I'm a very like passionate guy. I'm like, oh yeah, let's do it. Like, if you have a good idea right now, I'd be like, maybe, like I'm interested, so that's just my personality. Yeah. So like, I have to really vet that with our team and be like, Sarah and Stephanie, like, am I crazy about this? They're like, yes, we're not doing that.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
You know what I'm saying?
So like, and that's actually was going to be my next question is like, I mean, there are so many opportunities out there. And I think this is something that a lot of business owners really have a hard time with is understanding like long-term decisions, like how decisions affect your business. And because I don't think it's very black and white. I mean, like, I think with like retail, for example, is there a world you go full in on retail and you make a ton of money? Probably.
Absolutely there is.
But is there like another situation you go all in on e-com? Absolutely. You know, it's I don't think it's so black and white sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
But for you guys, when you're like looking at your KPIs, you're figuring out what to focus on. Like, how do you guys come to like a mutual, because I think people listening, they have co-founders, they have partners in business. And this is actually, speaking just personally, it's one of like the main topics of conversations that I find myself in is friction between co-founders, and like, we want to go different directions. And especially it's awkward when you're friends too. So when you guys have, you're trying to settle in on like, this is what we're focusing on. How do you navigate that conversation?
It's a good question, man. It's been a journey for us over the years. I think that the first few years of Duncan and Stone, there wasn't much like, hey, let's talk about strategy. Let's talk about long-term goals, like this and that. It was just, we're just trying to grow revenue. We're so focused on doing the next right thing. There wasn't much strategic, like we didn't have KPIs the first few years. That's just a new thing for us this year.
Yeah.
And so, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I remember a post you had early on that was like, hey, what do you guys check for your KPIs? Which, by the way, I think that is, I think a lot of people, this is just like a random little thing I wanted to say was, I think a lot of people think that you have to like be an expert on business to start a business. And a lot of the stuff we just figure out. We figure it out as we're doing it. You know, but I remember you asking about like, hey, what's everyone else doing for KPIs? And
that's a lot of the feedback I've gotten. If like echo what you just said, that I look to mentors, other people running a business, that I look to them and they're like, listen, man, come in with us. We're all figuring this out. Like there's experts everywhere for sure. But that mindset of like, I have to know how to do that. I didn't know how to run a business at all.
Right.
And I still don't feel like I know what I'm doing half the time for sure. So don't like give yourself a little grace. Let's like take the pressure down.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's good advice too. Cause I sit down with people who feel ashamed they don't know more. Like we look at their books. I mean, I don't do bookkeeping, but like part of our conversation sometimes is like looking at cash flow and things like this. And someone might get embarrassed on like, hey, this thing's all disheveled.
EBITDA, what the heck is that?
I don't know what the heck. I just had that exact conversation. But so like, it's like, so I was talking to someone the other day I was like, you should really give yourself a break. Cause I know, and this person was running a $200,000 business. And I was like, I know people who run a $700,000, $800,000 business who they don't even know how much they're selling of what they sell.
They don't know.
I mean, it's crazy disorganized.
Yeah.
So
anyway. I think that feedback is great for people in that world. Like just take a little breath, like just settle down. And the reality is what I've learned is just ask people. Like that's what we did And we still do. I had a call yesterday with a friend of mine who is in e-commerce, who I keep up with. And I'm like, he knows so much more about e-commerce than me. And I was like, dude, I got this thing. Like, I'm trying to figure out what to do. Like, what's your thoughts? And we just talked about it. He's like, man, this is what I would do. And so now we need to talk about whether or not we're going to do that. But like, I was like, I value what you're saying. I don't act like I know what the heck I'm doing or the answers for all this stuff. And so I didn't answer your question. The question you had was around KPI. How do you align on that? Basically, for us, we have gotten pretty tight as a team, like 4 of us as owners, to talk every year, a couple times a year, generally, of like, are we going in the same direction? Like, are we heading the same direction as a team? And if that answer is yes, which it has, thankfully, then we work through, like, what do we want to focus on? What are those KPIs? What are we going to be doing? And that's just a conversation. Like, we have strong personalities on our team. So it's not just like Garrett coming to the table with, hey guys, here's what I think we're going to do. I have since I'm the head wrangler, I'm like, this is kind of where I think we're leaning or should be heading. Let's talk about that. Mm-hmm. And then we process through it. And the team has been so great at just being like, Garrett, you run with it. You're kind of leading the charge. Stephanie, Sarah, Garland, they're like, they're in with me, obviously, but they're not one out there doing the work as much as, I am. So, hey, they're looking at me like to be the leader to do that, which is fine.
How has your thinking changed? Or not even if thinking is the right word, but like things that are top of mind. Obviously, it's different when you're running a 6-figure plus business versus, we sell a journal a day. Yeah. Those early days. I mean, like, because where I get to for me is like, I think of like, I can't think of like a great example, like just like a long piece of string. And like when I was first starting, I could see like this little tiny segment.
Yep.
And then now I see like a huge chunk of the string, and it's kind of, I don't know.
It's a different,
it's not necessarily overwhelming.
Perspective,
yeah. It's like you think you're becoming an expert, and then you start to understand all these other things at scale.
Yep.
And you're like, holy cow, there's a lot I need to think about that I wasn't thinking about.
I know.
I mean, how has that shifted for you?
No, that's a great question. It has over the years. Like, I think part of it for me is my role in the business now versus probably even a year ago where I was doing fulfillment and I was so just doing like tasks and activities within the business they had to get done. But I had other mentors and step in to say, hey, in order for you guys to continue to grow and scale, you have to stop doing those things. Like, you can't fulfill orders. That's not a thing anymore. Like, you need to take that off your plate so that you can look ahead. So for us, we're still trying to figure it out, honestly. So I don't like have a really clear answer necessarily, but we're thinking about what decisions, outsourcing decisions, let's say, or people that we're working with, like who do we need to bring on that we're not currently working with, or like an area of the business that we're not focused in that would help us grow in, say, 2024. It's less about like the next few months. It's like, how do we replicate and keep growing in the next year or two in a sustainable way?
Right.
Like, what do we need to be doing? So I'm asking questions to people in our world, like, hey, what do I need to be doing? Like, we're a few years in now. We have a sustained, a stable business, I should say. What else should we do?
I love also this is just like a personal thing, just having known you for a long time. I love how humble you are too. Because I think a lot of business owners, it's so much about ego and control that when you talk about like, oh, you can't do fulfillment anymore. I know some people who they're like, dude, I knew a guy who ran a like a home not repair. It's like a handyman kind of service.
Yeah.
And he had like 16 employees, and he was doing more homes than his employees were. And I was like, why? And he's like, well, I can't trust them to do it the right way. Which then I was like, but why did you hire them then?
Mm-hmm.
But it's that's
a good buddy of mine said it's about growth or control. I mean, that's kind of what he said. I think this is a Steve Graves thing.
I love that.
I'm thinking it's a Steve Graves thing.
I've never met him, but
you should.
I know the name.
He's amazing. Like,
I love
that's growth first. That's what he said.
That is really good.
And he said, hey, listen, if you're wanting to grow, you need to release control. And I was like, brilliant. It was brilliant.
This guy knows his stuff.
He does. He's an executive coach. He's amazing. But he was like, that was like the hard truth that I needed to hear of like, oh no. It was honestly so freeing though, because for us and for most people, like I needed to let go of that and other areas of our business where I wasn't even an expert.
Yeah.
Like it's actually better. We've grown more because I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
It's almost like it had to switch out of, like a switch went on in my mind.
Yeah. It's happening in my mind right now.
It's like, if I just release, I just got to release, find experts, find great partners that can do that. And in theory, like, in theory, you continue to grow. You actually grow more. It accelerates your growth. It was like light bulb.
Here's what I'll say. If this is a gut check for me, this is probably a gut check for a lot of you guys listening. I love this concept of growth versus control. And I think it's a great insight for sure, because I mean, here's the deal, guys. We're all growing our business. When you start your business, I mean, it's blood, sweat, and tears. You're so close to it. It's personal for you.
Yep.
And so the idea of like giving up parts of that business can feel like kind of giving parts of your child away. I don't know.
Kind of.
I don't know.
It's like your baby. Yeah, it's like a baby.
But you're giving like elements away that you want other people to give like the same care and attention for. So it can be hard to do.
It is very hard.
It's a great insight for sure.
It's a releasing thing though. And it doesn't happen overnight. Like my team, basically, Stephanie was trying to convince me for a year to release fulfillment. Just to be clear, she was like,
this is how by the way, this is how it goes. Where my wife she'll be like, hey, you need to do this, and I'm like, okay,
yeah, exactly.
Not like in a dismissive way. It goes in like into my like Rolodex in my mind of like whatever.
We need to listen to those people.
I know, right? And then a year later, I'm doing that thing anyway, and it's like, why didn't I just do what you said a year ago?
I listen? Yeah. So it was like just over time, just me releasing this grip of like, I need to control it. Because that's what I thought, dude. I thought no one's going to be able to fulfill a product exactly how I need it to be done so that the customer receives it and has the best experience ever after that order. Like, I just thought, there's no way. Like, I wouldn't let anybody do that. And it took some time. It took like after we found the right partner, it was like, I was on them though. I was like, this is how, if you guys screw this up, I'm out.
Yeah.
And they've been great.
Yeah.
And it's just a small example of things that we are doing that we could just release control of that.
Well, and you had to find the right partner, because I think that's the other piece of it too, is that sometimes I think people, they get into the idea of relinquishing control and like the very next person. And I think sometimes we just don't do a good job finding that partner. Other times the partner overpromises.
Yep.
And then you go right back and you swear,
I knew it.
Yeah, exactly.
I knew it was going to screw up.
When really it was never the right partner in the first place.
Exactly.
So your life's a lot easier now.
It is. It is
easier in some way. You don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, in some way.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's like, I am constantly thinking like, what if we get a competitor comes in and knocks us off? Like what if I'm like running through these different scenarios, and
when you have copycat people,
we have copycats.
Yeah,
we do. We do. We've found a handful of them. We're still working on a lot of them. So I find myself now working with lawyers and like copyright stuff. And so it's not fun. It's annoying to see that, like multiple items, basically straight copies of the work we've done.
I will say, I mean, I never thought you guys weren't a legitimate business, but I whenever you posted though, this was probably maybe like a year and a half ago, you posted a competitor or a copycat, and I was like, dude, he's made it.
You thought that?
Yeah, I thought
really?
He's made it. I mean, obviously you've made it, that you have something that someone else obviously sees value in, that they're ripping.
I appreciate that.
I was like, dude,
I know. Well, it is that's the tension. It's like, a very much a like, oh, I guess we are doing stuff right. We've seen competitors launch items similar to ours over the years, just because people we've looked at, and so whether or not it was because of our item or not, I don't know, but it almost is validating. It really is, of like, maybe we are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But it's also super frustrating, because you're like, now I got to deal with these jokesters out there trying to copy us.
Yeah.
So anyway, it happens though.
Yeah. It's in a weird way, it's a good sign. You're doing something right.
I guess so.
Well, Garrett, this has been an awesome conversation, man. For people listening, they want to buy a journal, they want to check out what you're doing. What's the best thing for them to do?
Go to our website. duncanandstone.com. So find us there. You could reach out to me on LinkedIn. Email our support email address. It's on our website. You know, if you want to invite me to another wedding, like I'm open, you know, for wedding season.
Are you a wedding cake guy?
I'm a wedding cake guy.
Yeah. Okay.
Dude, I love wedding cake. I love weddings. Just
I found out this is
generally.
like a thing, by the way. That
It's
people,
amazing. Yeah. Like who doesn't like a good party? Like,
Yeah,
are you kidding me? It's amazing. Like
Yeah.
I'm in.
You go to this wedding, they're like, we're going to cancel our order now. This is not
So our website for sure, duncanandstone.com. You
Yeah.
can find all our goods and
yeah.
check us out.
Great. For our listeners, I'm going to put that. I'll put the website and I'll put your LinkedIn in the episode description.
Great, man. Love it.
Thanks for coming on today. I loved it.
Appreciate it, man. It was a pleasure.
Hey, for you guys listening, if you enjoyed this episode, what the heck are you waiting on? Click the subscribe and follow button so you can keep getting good advice wherever you're at. Also, don't forget, if you want to support the podcast for as little as the price of a cup of coffee, you can jump on our Patreon. It's at patreon.com/goodadvice. And more importantly, if you want to support the podcast through advertising your business, you can check out my email address, blake@goodadvicecoaching.com, to chat more about that. Those of you who support the podcast, thank you so much. And that's all we got today. That's today's good advice. We'll catch you later. See ya.